Hi, I'm Michael here, Christ of England. Today's video, I'm going to explain why Britain is under attack by all the evil forces, but how we can defeat them with the power of Christ and the Anglo spirit. Let's go. Okay, so online, Britain has basically become a joke, and rightly so in terms of the state of our country, but wrongly so in terms of our people. And there's this idea that, oh, what are the British people doing? They're weak, they're not putting up any fight. But that is a complete wrong agenda for the most part. And what we are seeing is multiple evil forces coming up against the British Anglo spirit, which has been the greatest bastion for freedom throughout the last centuries. And to prove my point, all of the great countries of the world, the most freedom countries in the world, or the countries with most freedoms, are all based off the Anglo-Saxon spirit. So obviously you have Britain, which is, well, it used to be a free country, and from there spawned America, and then you have the Commonwealth. All the best countries in the world for freedom are the Anglo-centered countries. So Britain, America, Australia, all of these countries where all people from all other continents, all over the world want to go to because we're the bastions of freedom. And I believe America is the best example of freedom. And they were the best Anglos seeking freedom. That's why they rebelled against the British, but they were British people. And they founded America. And one thing I found interesting was I just watched random YouTube videos of people traveling to Russia, Ukraine, China, North Korea, all over the world, India, and this interviewer always asked them, he goes, if you could live in any other country in the world, where would you live? Every single person, whether it be Russian, Ukrainian, as I said, Chinese, North Korea, they all said, I would love to live in America. And why do they want to live in America? They want to live in America because it's the land of the free. And all these people did not live in free countries. They lived in communist China. They lived in authoritarian Russia. They lived in Ukraine. They lived in North Korea. And what all humans really want deep down mostly is freedom. They don't want to live under authoritarian control. And the world is full of authoritarian control for the most part if you take out the Anglo-centered countries. Because as I said, you have the communist Chinese, no freedom. North Korea, obviously no freedom. The Islamic world, you have no freedom. And now we have the European Union and the globalist plans to implement global communism. Again, no freedom. So essentially you have all of the whole world with zero freedom. The only bastion of freedom was the Anglo and European countries, but they have been co-opted by the European Union globalists who want to put us into slavery, into global communism. That's what they're trying to implement. And once again, the British stood up in Brexit and said, we don't want any more of your nonsense. Henceforth, we voted for Brexit. And all that did was antagonize the globalists even more. And this is why the agenda has been to flood Britain with endless amounts of migrants, because it would dilute the Anglo culture and it will make it easier for them to implement their communism. And this is why we see Keir Starmer and Labour Party, they are mostly communists and they are doing the agenda of the European Union. Or the global communists, you know, the World Economic Forum and all those clowns. But one thing the British do not like, because we have that innate yearning for freedom, we do not like tyrants. That's why Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of our country, because we don't do tyrants. We don't like authoritarians. And this is why you're seeing them low in the polls. This is why you're seeing raise the flags. This is why you're hearing sports fans chanting Keir Starmer's a wanker everywhere, because we do not like tyrants. And this, I believe, is why we are under such attack. We're not a joke country. They know if they can take down Britain and the British people and the Anglo people, that they will win the war. But we also know if the British people can defeat our enemy, the rest of Europe will follow, America will follow, and freedom will be restored throughout the world. Because every human has an innate yearning for freedom. So if Britain restores freedom, and Europe restores freedom, America restores freedom, Australia, Canada restores freedom, then all of a sudden people in Russia, people living under communist Chinese, will see that light, that freedom, and seek freedom in their own lands. And this is the one thing the communist dictators don't want, or the communists leadership such as the Chinese, the dictators such as in Russia, such as in North Korea. The Islamic countries who want authoritarian Sharia law, this is one thing they do not want. This is why they hate the British and the Anglos, because we're the bastion of freedom. And we stand up to tyrants and we defeat tyrants, such as we've done with communism, such as we've done with Nazism, such as how we ended slavery to bring about freedom for people of the world. And this is why the British Empire is made to seem evil, because they want to attack Britain, because we are essentially been the best empire throughout the past 1,000, 2,000 years. In terms of we've brought more good to the world. Yes, did some bad things along the way, absolutely. But when you look at all the other empires, such as just look at the Ottoman Empire and the sort of evil they did, if we had an Islamic empire controlling the world, we would be in absolute pure darkness. But if you look at what the British Empire did, it ended slavery, it brought about the right of democracy and freedom for people around the world. And the interesting thing is, once we've given all these countries independence, you'd think they'd be happy, but a lot of these countries have gone to hell in a handbasket once they've lost mainly European so-called colonizers. Once they've got their freedoms, their countries have gone to hell in a handbasket. And then they all want to come to our countries that they said, oh, the evil British, we need our freedom. So they got their freedom, but their country's gone to hell in a handbasket. And now they've got to come to our countries as, oh, we're migrants and refugees. We need to come to your countries and ruin your country. But that's one thing we can't have. We need to restore Britain for the British and a small minority of good migrants. And we need to be a bastion and light of the world. And then these other people have got to go back and sort out their countries. Or even better, if they want to live with the freedom that we have in our countries, rather than importing millions of foreigners, or if millions of them want to come here, we can just send a few of our finest British people out there and pay them as a job to run those countries, because clearly they cannot run the countries themselves. They just fall to corruption and incompetence. But one thing the British are good at is they're probably, out of all people of the world, they're definitely the most competent and the best at running a civilization. And to be fair, a lot of such as the Chinese, Japanese are good at running civilization. They just fall for authoritarian control. So if they had freedom-loving leaders, they could be absolutely amazing civilizations. And that basically is why America was such an amazing country. But sadly, the freedom that was given to them, instead of using the freedom to serve God, as it says in the Bible, they used their freedom to serve their sins and their lusts. And the reason America's gone to hell in a handbasket as well is because they've fallen away from God and they're chasing the American dream. They're chasing materialism rather than freedom in God. And with that point being said, the most important thing, how Britain and the Anglo people can win this battle, is with the power of the Spirit of Christ and returning to our true Father. Because we have evil ideologies such as communism, Islamism, authoritarian, whether it be the rise of National Socialism. All of these organizations or ideologies want to take away people's freedom. They want authoritarian control. So we end up with COVID, where you can't even go out for a walk without the government controlling you. And the opposite of that is the Anglo spirit and the Spirit of Christ, which is the Spirit of truth. I'm not really talking about Christianity. I'm talking about the inner spirit, which we're made in the image of God, and that image is the image of Christ. And as Yuri Bezmenov said, to defeat communism, you need the power of the Spirit, which is the power of Christ. And that's how England can be restored, or Britain can be restored, by repenting, returning to the Father, and awakening that Spirit of Christ within us, or that who we are, and using that power to defeat all our enemies. So freedom can only come. This is why all the forces of darkness in Britain is very dark at the moment. We have the rise of communism, the rise of Islamic extremism, and the rise of National Socialism. Three great evils. And we must defeat it, but we can only defeat it with the power of Christ. Nobody talks about this. People talk about Christianity, or we need to vote for reform. All this stuff is not going to do anything. We need to have a spiritual revolution, a true spiritual revolution, not left-wing hippie spirituality, but the spirit of Christ, which is the spirit of truth, which connects us to our loving Father. And through that, we will defeat our enemies. And it may seem that we don't have a chance, but this is the story of David and Goliath. You know, David was a small man compared to Goliath, but the reason that David could defeat Goliath, because he used the power of the Spirit. That's the analogy or the parable of that story. When he used the stone and the catapult or the shot put or whatever it was, that was the power of the Spirit. Even though he was small, he had the power of the Spirit. Even though in Britain we're small compared to these great ideologies and all the power and money behind it. But if we use the power of Christ, then we will defeat our enemies. And that is essentially why I've set up the Christ of England. And I don't want the British people and also the good non-British people supporting us to be too downhearted. You know, we're seen as a joke, but the elites, the scumbag, evil people know that we're not a joke. And they know that the British will stand up to tyrants till the death. You know, over our dead body, will we allow our country to be taken over by tyrants? And we're starting to wake up and we're starting to realize it. And they're panicking because they know once we awaken and we fight back, they will have no greater enemy. And especially in spiritual terms, they will be going up against Christ. If we repent, the Anglos with the spirit of Christ will be undefeatable, and they will lose their mind. When we awaken it, they will understand that they brought about the ultimate enemy that they could face. And I want to end the video with a positive message and say that yes, the country's messed up. Yes, it's a complete and utter mess, but there is a path to victory. There is a path to victory, but it must be done using the power of Christ. I can see it clearly in my mind how we can resolve all these problems in our country. It wouldn't really be too hard if we got the right people in power. But how we achieve that is a mass movement of people turning to the truth of Christ and supporting them. You don't need to go and do wondrous things, just support leaders. And that's all it can take. The reason our country is a mess is because our leaders are bums. All leaders in the world, whether they be religious or political leaders, are bums. You know, the communist Chinese, Putin, the authoritarian. The Church of England leaders are a joke. The Catholic Church leaders are a joke. There is no good leaders. We're led by wolves. But as Jesus Christ was the good shepherd. And if we have good shepherds to be leaders and people to follow the good shepherds, then we will win the battle. And that's why I have set up the Christ of England, to be a good shepherd, because I know the path forward and I know that I have the power of Christ within me and that I am righteous and that I am not a wolf. And all we need to do is to get people to be led by the good shepherd rather than be led by wolves. And as I say, the British people are a joke, but the British people are not a joke. They're led by wolves. They're sheep who need to be led by a shepherd. But at the moment, the British people, for the most part, are sheep led by vicious wolves. And half of them don't even know it. And there's nothing wrong with being a sheep. I understand that most people don't have time to do the sort of research that I've done, to do the spiritual work I've done. And that's why we can't necessarily expect everybody to do it. And I don't expect everybody to do the amounts of work that I have done. But I just need your support. And if you follow the right leaders, then we can go to the promised land. Okay? So that's the point of my video today, to give a message of hope and to understand why the British are seen as a joke, but we're not. And they know we're not a joke. And as I said, the reason I set up Christ of England is to do something about it. But I need people's support. We need to get, ideally, millions of people involved in this movement. I said, in the new year, I'm going to have everything set up. I want to do a GoFundMe and use pretty much all the money to fund this movement and make it happen. Okay, so if you like what I'm talking about, share this video with as many people as you can to join this movement of the Christ of England. Like it, share it, subscribe if you're new, comment for the algorithm, and God bless everybody today. Goodbye.